Welcome to another episode of The Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. The storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors. A clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to The Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Ladies and gentlemen at the Redgrave Theatre in Bristol, would you please welcome your host for this evening's performance of The Good Listening To Show, Stories of Distinction and Genius Live, Mr. Chris Groin! You guys, thank you so much. And welcome to the World Wide Web as well. This is very, very exciting. We're streaming live across the planet as we speak. I'm delighted to be here. This is the show in which I invite movers, makers, shakers, mavericks, influencers, and also personal heroes into a clearing or serious happy place of my guests' choosing as we all meet and greet them to hear their stories of distinction and genius. And with that criteria in mind, I can't tell you how excited I am to welcome none other than the Welsh comedy legend. He's reached national treasure status officially as of tonight. Would you please welcome Rob Brydon! They seem moderately impressed and happy to see you, which is lovely. Take a seat,
lovely.
Rob. Let me first of all charge you with some water.
Thank you very much.
And you've got some notes, you've done some preparation. I like you for that.
Yes.
So, Robert Brydon Jones, look at you, all national treasure, beautiful and awesome. We're old friends, and we have history. I'm just going to blow a bit of happy smoke at you. Back in the day, do you remember I used to stay with you when I came up to London to do some castings?
Yes.
Do you also remember, I do, but you probably don't, there was an occasion where I was up and we were thrown together spontaneously to be a bit of a double act for a commercial casting.
Vaguely.
And then what was a bit awkward was I got the job and you didn't.
Well, them's the breaks.
Them's the breaks. So it's my pleasure to, I don't know what happened to you after that, but it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you back to the limelight today.
What was that for? What was it for?
Do you know what? I think it was a Goose beer commercial.
Was it? And I didn't get,
Well, I did, and it was marvellous. But then,
I've done plenty of commercials since then. I can assure you. But isn't it funny how we sort of block out? I blocked out lots of my failures. You know, seriously, the things that, and people often remind me of them. And I go, oh, yeah, I think it's a survival thing, you know, a survival instinct. You sort of, oh, yeah, never mind, move on.
And it's your 60th birthday very recently.
Yes.
You were born the 3rd of May. You're from Talbot land.
Yes.
And that's land of the Welsh giants.
Yes.
Richard Burton land.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure where Tom Jones fits. I know he's Welsh.
No, he's Pontypridd, which is, Port Talbot is, Richard Burton was from Pontrhydyfen, up a bit. Anthony Hopkins from Margam, grew up in the same street at the same time as my father and my uncles. I know. And they're the two. Michael Sheen, now very associated with Port Talbot, but Burton and Hopkins. You know, so when I grew up, there was nobody. Richard Burton, at his peak, was the most famous man in the world with Elizabeth Taylor. And he came from just down the road, you know, it was incredible.
And what we're going to be doing
is
we're going to curate you through the structure of the Good Listening To show.
I can't help but face the audience. Should I be facing you a bit more?
No.
I just naturally want to do that, I'm sorry.
Well, do what you naturally want to do, because the whole point is, people have been asking me, what's it going to be like to interview Rob Brydon? So may I say, I'm going to take you through a curated structure. However, the invitation to you, what I described, I think it's going to be like, if you'll excuse an equestrian analogy, I'm going to straddle the good horse Rob Brydon, I'm going to hold the reins, and I'm going to just enjoy a gallop through the clearing, which is the construct that we're here to talk about.
You love an analogy. I've never known anyone to embrace an analogy as much as you, and I'm happy to be servicing it. And I have got notes because you got some very specific things, and I had a real fear of sitting here and inspiration not coming. So fire away, I'm ready.
We're going to do this. So it all takes place energetically in a clearing.
Yes.
Then there's going to be a tree.
Yes.
Then there's a lovely juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's going to be some alchemy, some gold, a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare.
It's as straightforward as this. It really is. He was telling me this on the phone. I was going, hang on, what?
Hang on, right? And you do impressions, not me, but you did say, oh, you do love a metaphor, don't you?
Yes, you do, and an analogy and a metaphor, yes.
And then there's going to be a golden baton and a cake, and I can't remember if I've mentioned those already.
Yeah.
Marvellous. But feel free to go where you like, how you like, as silly as you like, and just as deep as you like, wherever you want to go with this structure. Any questions before we start?
No, none at all.
In fact, just before we start, I just want to show you a couple of surprise photographs for you. This is us back in the day.
Yeah.
And we were trying to work it out backstage. I think this is circa 1990.
I think it's about 94 or 5, 93 or 4. Far right, Ruth Jones. Then that's Rachel Lewis, isn't it? Who I've not seen for decades. Next to her, Julia, that's Julia, isn't it? Julia Davis in her
She
dark
of Human Remains,
days.
which I know we're going to talk about as well.
I did Human Remains with her, and she, Nighty Night, she did, and she's in Gavin Stacey, plays Dawn. And there is Mr. Christopher Grimes, you handsome chap. Look at that second back there.
Yes, much more follically challenged now I am, but...
Oh, I don't know, I think you still look great.
And your hair's a happy surprise too, may I say?
Well, yeah, my hair went and then came back mysteriously. If you're not aware of it, do Google it, but let's just say I embraced medical advances.
I have to say my son Stan did Google it and said, how did that come back? But you've just explained it, which is fantastic. And Stan's in the audience too.
Yeah.
Hurrah!
It's the appliance of science.
And this is the lovely Neil Bett.
Yes.
And this is a very important man in all of our lives, actually, in terms of the genesis of now what we do. A chap called Paul Z. Jackson, who formed a comedy improvisation troupe where we met called More Fool Us.
Yeah.
And I still run Instant Wit in Bristol, and that was the precursor company before Instant Wit, which is still being run to this day. But thanks in no small part to this man, Paul Z. Jackson, and his yes and methodology.
Well, this was an improv group, and under the auspices of Paul. And even before we did the first show, he ran a sort of workshop for weeks and weeks and weeks, and learnt some principles that I still use, to this day. Real basic things like when you talk to an audience, you ask an audience member for something, you repeat their answer to you, because very simply, a lot of the audience may not have heard it. It's as straightforward as that. The principles of improvisation, which come under the heading of a yes and. So if you're playing a scene and someone comes on, and so if Chris came on and I said, Reverend, I see you've arrived and you brought your penguin, then he would not say, no, I don't have a penguin. He would say, yes, and he's in formal wear because we're going to a dance. And then I might say, well, I'm also going to that dance and I'm bringing a duck with me. Now, you can play within that, you can challenge within that, but essentially you're always just adding things on. And all that, they're well known. Paul didn't invent those techniques, but he taught them to us. So yeah, as you said, very important. Keith
Johnson is the sort of very, very famous practitioner with his book Impro in the background as well, that Paul would have given great homage to as well. And Jane Sherman, of course, she works with David Schwimmer in something on Sky TV very recently.
Intelligence, yeah. And she worked with Julia a lot, and she's in some of Julia's stuff as well.
And Neil Bett is going to be interviewing me for this construct, because I interviewed him again recently for this show.
He's not short. He's just...
No.
I think he's either sitting or tutting. If you're looking at him compared to me, and you're thinking, my God, he must be tiny.
Very small man.
He's not. He's a probably above average height, I would say.
That's a good segue to small man in a box, which is one of your most famous impressions. I don't know if you're willing to...
I'm always willing, Chris, as you know. This is a thing I do. It's a stupid thing, but people respond to it very well. I was at home some years ago, and I was thinking about ventriloquists for some reason. And I was trying to... I couldn't do it. And then all of a sudden I went... Where are you? I know you're... It's a really tiny voice. I don't know how he does it. Oh my God, how is he making that really small sound? I don't know. And I've done that all over the world.
Like small man in a box. And so he's... I say just slightly above average height, and he's had no sort of... His hair has stayed a wonderful, bushy... It's gone grey, I have to tell him, but it's all fine. That won't be a surprise to him. A couple of other random photos for you. This is you riffing about on Bristol Downs, I believe, and then we've got Ruth Jones in the background looking at you thinking, what the fuck is he doing? And there's no change there.
What was that for? What is that? Who took the photos? That looks like a classic thing where a photographer says, can you make it a bit more interesting? And you think, well, why? And you end up doing that. I mean, I don't know what that was.
And you asked me just before we went on, where's Monette Lee now? And she's there, standing behind you.
Monette,
and she lives in Australia. And then finally, the other picture is, this is the penultimate picture. This is me, I suppose, in a time vortex warming up with you and Julia Davis to come back to interview you this very evening. This is us doing a two-person expert somewhere in Bristol.
That's when so Chris would ask us questions and the answer would be between each other, one word each. You do that. Now, what I do remember of that, because the two shows that kind of launched me were Marion and Jeff and Human Remains. And Human Remains was with Julia. We wrote it together. We played all these different couples. And I have a really kind of romanticized kind of, is it frozen aspic? Is that a phrase? Memory. This is decades ago. But that was an outdoor festival we were performing at. And I can remember Julia, I didn't know her very well then at all, being there and we're doing a scene and I can remember looking in her eyes and going, oh God, there's a real connection here. There's a chemistry, there's a thing. Really remember that. And then this photo resurfaced recently. Somebody sent it to me on social media. And it's amazing to see because then, we went on and made that series and it did well. It won awards and all sorts of stuff. And then we went on and we're in Gavin Stacey together and we're still friends now. But that for me is a really important photo. And I didn't tell you or show you what photographs I was going to show you. There's only one more to show you. Right. And then this is the last photo where you end up at some random Christmas party somewhere. That's the Christmas episode in the first or second series. That one, I remember that. And look at Stefan Rodri as Dave coaches. He's probably my favourite character. Look at the look on his face. It's all right. He's just superb. And Uncle Bryn is just totally iconic. Uncle Bryn is in the building. And there's still the question that will never be answered, and I think it was never ever written, actually. Which question is that? And remember, we can ask questions at the end, so keep listening. Okay, so back to the open road for getting on the structure now. Yes,
so, okay. It all takes place energetically in a clearing or serious happy place of my guests' choosing. Everybody answers that differently in my circa 250 episodes so far. So where would you say Rob Brydon goes to get clutter-free, inspirational, and able to think? Where is your serious happy place, Rob? Well, I've wrestled with this because the actual answer is we have a house in France. Please don't hate me. Right? If you did well in the 1970s, it was okay to talk about it, but I feel so self-conscious. But that's the honest answer. That is where I feel most relaxed and it's amongst nature and birds.
In second place would be our garden. It seems to be a thing with getting older. All my friends say the same thing.
The garden now in Twickenham.
In Twickenham, yeah. You just take so much pleasure and solace from nature in a way that you never did when you were younger. And it's for a simple reason. Things are growing and living, you know. But it would be, yes, out in France. That's very sort of special.
And in terms of your timeline of how long you've had that property for, so how long has it been a happy place for you?
Well, what day is it today? It was about last Thursday, I think. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. Thank you, P&O Cruises. Some good came of it.
And when were you last there?
I was there a few weeks ago with friends. I don't get out as much as I would like. I had a boys' weekend there. But that's where you just automatically switch off and it's lovely. And then second place would be at home, sitting in the garden. We got a dog not long ago, a golden retriever, and if she's, they're not as easy as you'd think. They've got great publicists because they have promoted an image of the most compliant, easygoing, happy dog. I would warn you against golden retrievers. Go and pet somebody else's in the street, but don't actually give one.
It back.
Yeah.
Lovely. So in terms of now, I'm going to arrive with a tree in your clearing. So just to make it a bit thick, what part of France are we in?
Well, it's not a very fashionable area. It's sort of near Carcassonne.
Oh, lovely.
Do you know Carcassonne? I didn't know. It's got a hell of a castle. When you see it from the motorway, you go, it looks like it's CGI'd onto it's stunning. I just thought of a story and I'm wondering if it's in poor taste.
Let's have it.
No, it would be. No, I can't because it's to do with some. I'll tell you afterwards when we do that meet and greet in the bar. I'll tell you then, okay?
That's going to be like Uncle Bryn. That's going to be the question that never get answered.
What did happen at Carcassonne Castle?
Come on, was it CGI? Was it real?
Yes.
So I'm not trying to get your actual address, but what we're going to do is now a bit sort of what 3 words. I'm finding a region to plonk a tree down.
Right.
Now, because of my acting background, this is a bit deliberately existential, a bit Waiting for Godot-esque. And the tree now is where you're going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. You have had 5 minutes, or as long as you've needed since you knew that you're going to be doing this, Rob Brydon, to think about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and borrow from the film Up. Have you all seen the film Up? Yeah. That's where the dog goes, oh, squirrels. We've all got shiny object syndromes, or squirrels, or monsters of distraction, which could be your dog and your cat. In any case, as a sort of metaphorical, literal squirrel. And then the 1 is a quirky or unusual fact about you, Rob Brydon, we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. It's not a memory test.
I've not felt this much pressure since I did my O-levels.
And don't forget, go where you like, as silly as you like, how you like. If you wanted to do one of the answers as Michael Caine, that would be fine.
Don't you hate it when impressionists deliberately don't do their impressions and they get prompted and they just sit there and they're like, kind of above it. I am not one of those people.
And just while we've stumbled on that is one of my very, very favourite clips that I've seen of the many, many clips available of you online is you and Steve Coogan with Michael Caine about 3 rows behind you, both doing Michael Caine impressions.
This is a great clip. It's on YouTube I always say about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's usually about 15 years ago, but about 4 or 5, 6, 7 years ago, before the pandemic, there was a night at the Albert Hall. Jonathan Ross, wow, what a cork of a show tonight, ladies and gentlemen, interviewing Michael Caine. And Quincy Jones was there conducting the bloody orchestra. It was incredible. And they had this idea that they'd start the show, the lights would go down, but you keep the lights up on one section, one of the loggias, I think they call it, loggia, at the Albert Hall, on those boxes at the side. And Steve and I would arrive late. And so that's what happened. So the lights go down, still there, and we come in and go, oh, sorry, a bit late, sorry, oh, sorry, and we come through and say, we mention our names like we're full of ourselves, you know. Just sorry, Rob Brydon, Steve Coogan, sorry, we sit down. And then we go, oh, I'm looking forward to this, aren't you? Yes. And then we talk, and we get into doing the impression. You know, he doesn't talk like that, he talks like this, and blah, 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 blah. Laugh, laugh, laugh. Unbeknownst to the audience, a few rows behind us, sat behind a programme for the event, is Michael Caine. And he's hidden there, and he just goes like this. The place erupted. Oh my God. And he, because he's Michael Caine, he just timed it. We'd rehearsed it before with him in his dressing room. And, you know, Michael was quite old then. And listen, the man's a god, right? But we came out going, oh, is this going to be okay? You know, because is he going to be all right? Well, bloody hell. He just timed it like a laser. And he just waited, and he waited, and then he went, you're big men, but you're out of shape. No, I think he said, you're funny men, but you're out of shape. You know, for me, this is whatever the line is. He said, now sit down and watch the show. And it was, so I got a great photo at home of me and Steve in his dressing room with Michael Caine. We looked like kids that have won a competition, which in a way we had. And that was very special. And it's on YouTube. And Danny Baker is sitting a few rows. Danny just happened to be in that same box, so he's there as well.
And one of my other very favourite clips, not specifically about you, but about someone that I know you were very, very close to and hugely admires, was Barry Humphries.
Yeah.
He does that wonderful stumbling into the King's box. Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, Barry Humphries was my... he'll come up in this. He was a massive influence on me, and much to my incredible surprise, became... I would class him as a real friend, a proper friend, you know, which I still pinch myself over to this day. Yeah, the great Where Edna at the Royal Variety goes in on Charles and Camilla. I think he was Prince Charles then, and sits down, and it's all, well, you watch it. It'll be funnier if you watch it.
And
but it's great.
I'm glad to know that Barry Humphries will be featuring further down
the
path
yeah.
of where I'm taking you. So back to the structure of the tree. So 4 things, Rob, that you'd say have shaped you.
Okay, all right, let's go. 4 things. Well, so I'll try and do them in order. I mean, given what I've ended up doing, which is having a living of doing something that I love, and that's something that I dreamt of doing, literally dreamt of doing, because there was a period after we'd worked together in that group, and I was in London and I couldn't get arrested, you know, I just couldn't get ahead, I couldn't get seen by casting directors. I had friends who became favourites of casting directors, and I couldn't get in through the front door, you know. To help myself get off to sleep at night, and they would call this perhaps manifestation or visualising. I would imagine I was on Parkinson, and I was being interviewed by Michael Parkinson. And I would imagine, you had a wonderful career, Rob. I mean, you're doing so many things. Tell me about you. And I genuinely, I would play this out in my head, and I would say, yeah, well, of course, you know, I do this, Michael, and I do that. And I would eventually go off to sleep. I did this many times. And then eventually I did go on to Parkinson, and again, got to know him, you know, quite well. And so that now, why am I telling you? So it's being right. 4 things that shape me. So as a kid, 4, 5, 6, 7, it would have been seeing comedians on the television, and I think seeing them differently to most people. So most people would be entertained by them and enjoy them. But I think that if you end up doing what I've done, you are also, even in that tiny young way, you're analysing them or you're appreciating them at a different level, and you want to know more. And I think that it would have planted a seed in me. There was a famous Welsh comedian, long gone, died same year as Elvis, 77, called Ryan Davies. Anybody know of Ryan Davies? Okay, great. And he was in a double act called Ryan and Ronnie. They worked in the Welsh language and in English. And my local theatre was this Grand Theatre in Swansea. And they put a panto on every year. and he would either be the dame or the idiot or whatever. And we would go, I'd have been 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and I have a visceral sort of, again, romanticized memory of crying with laughter in the stalls. But I have no memory of what he was doing. But my memory is of how I reacted to him. Crying, laugh, laugh, laugh. That would have gone in. Now, Max Boyce then would have come to the fore when I was a kid. So I was 10 in 75. Max was big then. And I never used to think of him as a direct influence. And then I saw a clip of one of his shows from, say, the 70s or 80s. And the way he came onto the stage with a kind of childlike enthusiasm, I went, oh, maybe I took a bit of that from him. I hadn't realized. I think sometimes you get, especially if you, like me, you get interviewed a lot, you end up giving the same answers, you know, and it becomes your story, or I watched this person, that person. But there's always more to it. You know, it's never straightforward. And I got to know Victor Spinetti. Does that name mean anything? Yeah. Well, I became a friend of Vic towards the end of his life. And he did a fantastic one-man show called A Very Private Diary. And it was his stories about working with Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Peter Sellers. He knew John Lennon. He used to tell a story about John Lennon. He said, I was with John one day. He said, hey, Vic, you know, it's very cold. Do you want to go someplace warm? He said, well, I thought he meant the kitchen. Next thing you know, we're in bloody Morocco. And I have a show now I do with a band, and we tour around, and you know, one of the joys of it compared to stand-up is you've got the company of these talented, lovely people. So we'd be on the bus after a show, and of course, because I'm the boss, just like Bruce, I get to choose the music. So I said, let's listen to Victor's thing. It's on Spotify. We put it on, and blow me, I was listening to that, and I went, bloody hell, how much have you stolen from this man? Because his rhythms in his storytelling, I went, Jesus, I didn't realize that. I'm aware of the influences of Barry Humphries and Ronnie Corbett with his timing and things like that, Woody Allen, all sorts of people. But so when your question, Chris, is, you know, 4 things that have shaped me, well, those as influences, and then also shaping me would be meeting Ruth Jones. Yeah. Because we were at school together. We were at Porthcawl Comprehensive School. And I met her when I was about 14. I'd been at school in Swansea. And then we moved to Porthcawl, going up in the world, you know, the Saint-Tropez of South Wales, Porthcawl. And I went from a little independent, private day school there. It's the one that Catherine Zeta-Jones was at. Everywhere I went, there was a future star. That's true, because before that one, I was at a little school, another school in Porthcawl. Eddie Izzard had been there. Honestly. Catherine was at the one in Swansea. And then I was moving to Porthcawl Comp, and I was a bit nervous. I didn't know a soul, you know. And I won't pretend, but this is a bit I do in my show. I say, so there I was, and I'll never forget Ruth. So I was in the playground all alone, and Ruth saw me, and she took pity on me. And I'll never forget the first thing she said. She was about as far away as you are, madam. She stood, I was there, Twix in hand. So, not a euphemism, I was holding a chocolate bar. I said, and it always gets that laugh. And I said, Ruthie, I'll never forget, she looked at me and she went, oh, what's occurring? I said, you should write that down. That didn't happen. So I met her because we were both part of the drama thing. We had a fantastic, young, dynamic drama teacher called Roger Burnell, and he inspired us. He was superb. Still in touch with him now. He got an MBE or an OBE recently and came and had lunch at our house afterwards. You know, that's so emotional already. Steady on. So I met Ruth there, and we became friends. And obviously, she's been so important in my life. She was in an episode of Human Remains. She's fantastic in it. Then she was in Nighty Night with Ruth. she'd met James on Fat Friends, the Kay Mellor series. And I met James in 2002, maybe, on a comedy drama called Cruise of the Gods. Me, Coogan, we were the two leads. David Walliams, that's where I met him, was on this cruise ship filming. James Corden, that's where I met him. Russell Brand was an extra. Okay. Jack Jones, the American singer, was on it. There was Philip Jackson, the wonderful actor. Anyway, I meet James on that, and what I always remember, I think he already knew Ruth. We're filming a lot of it on a cruise ship, and we're also in an out-of-season Greek resort. And it was infested with mosquitoes. But they didn't seem to like my blood. But they loved Steve. He's very popular. And he got bitten so badly under one eye that we had to change the whole filming schedule. And if you ever see it, he's wearing sunglasses in a lot of scenes where you might think you don't need sunglasses just to hide the big swollen eye. It looked like he was in Rocky. But the reason I'm telling this is James, I remember we'd been out to some taverna and we're walking back to this hotel. And I swear to God, James was unknown, James Corden, unknown. And he's talking to me because he loved Marion and Jeff and Human Race, because at that point I was the guy. And he's walking with me and he goes, oh, what I really want to do is I want to write. And he said, have you got any advice? I haven't got advice. But I said, well, all I can say to you is stop talking about it and do it. And then, a few years later, the two of them, Ruth and James, came to me and said, we've written this thing and we've written this part for you. And that began that journey that has, given me so much in my life.
And there's shaping and inspiring there. And
well, a bit of both, and I realise I am going over
there's often a lot of crossover, which is fantastic.
A lot of crossover. So meeting Ruth, and then also, we've mentioned them already, Steve Coogan, and Julia Davis. So important to me. And I met Julia in the same way that I met you.
Yes.
So important because she got me into Steve's orbit.
Yeah.
Because we did our stuff with the improv group. Then, why did I stop doing that? Was it just too far to, guys? I was now in London.
I think you're going to London to find your fortune.
Yeah, I was in London. It was too hard to travel because I had been doing it from Cardiff.
Yeah.
It wasn't as far. It was too much hassle to keep going. So I stopped doing it. Julia stopped. Julia went AWOL for about 2 or 3 years. No one knows where she was. But we would occasionally write actual handwritten letters to each other, I think. It was just before email. And then the next thing I know, she's in London and she's working with the best people in comedy. Chris Morris, for God's sake. She's working with Graham Linehan and Arthur Matthews, right? And she's working with Steve Coogan, right? Who was, to me, because he was doing what I wanted to do. Because I'd got stuck in local radio and television and stupid parts in sitcoms and things. And Steve had started out doing voiceovers like me and impressions like me, but was now doing character comedy. I wanted to do. Julia got the part in his live show, The Man Who Thinks He's It, along with Simon Pegg, who was also not really that well known. I remember her first day of rehearsal with Steve, phoning her that night and asking that fan question, what's he like? And that's what wow. And she said, then she told me some stories about him, and they said this was quite funny, and he did that, he's quite serious, and and I had a demo tape at this point I'd made. One of the characters was Keith Barrett, who went on to do Marion and Jeff. He was sitting in because I'd done him on the radio, I had a show on Radio Welsh. Sitting in his taxi, driving around, talking, da-da-da. And I said, could you get this to Steve? Could you get it to Steve? So Steve could see it. And she did. And then has he seen Steve's seen it yet? And this went on and on. Eventually, yes, he really likes it. Oh, my God, I can't believe it. And I was doing a radio show for the BBC, Stupid Voices, on a thing on Radio 5 every Friday at Bush House, and Steve was doing his incredible record-breaking residency at the Lyceum Theatre, now home to the Lion King. And there he was in his pomp. And this is about 97, 98. And you talk about engineering your own luck and opportunities. I knew that on a Friday night after, or every night after the show, the cast would drink at a particular pub. So I said, right, I'm taking myself off to that pub after we'd done our show, and I'm just going to happen to meet him. I'll hang out with Julia. So I took the engineer from the show with me. We go there, and there's Julia. Hey, she goes, oh, I'm really tired. I'm going home. I went, oh, okay. I'm on my own now. So I just sat. I thought, well, sat there. And anyway, Steve saw me. I still remember this clear as a day. And he went, oh, you're Julia's friend, aren't you? Yeah, yeah. I've seen your tape. Yeah, it's actually very good. Yeah. And he said, you've got something. He said, not everybody has. He said, Julia has, and Simon has, and you have. He says, I'd actually like to work with you one day. Well, I cannot overstate what that meant to me. I had to walk from there back to Waterloo Station to get back to where I lived then in East Sheen. In my memory, I floated on air over the bridge to Waterloo Station. I got in, and my first wife, Martina, I woke her up. I just met Steve Coogan. He thinks I've got something. I can't tell you how big it was. It was huge. Which makes all the things we've gone on to do together all the more remarkable. How often does that happen to anybody? That you see someone that you want and you end up doing stuff with them. So anyway, that started that off. So those are the people. In answer to your question, Mr. Grimes, I would say Ryan Davis, Max Boyce, Victor Spinetti, Ruth Jones, Steve Coogan, and Julia Davis.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Could you say a bit more about Ronnie Corbett as well? Because
Ronnie,
I know you got very, very close to him as well.
Yeah. I've had this weird thing in my life where I've always had more respect for age and experience than youth and energy, right? So I was never into punk, right? I like new wave stuff that had melody, but just energy and rebellion on its own just left me cold. But like Paul Simon crafting a song, or Bob Dylan, or whatever, Barbara Streisand's voice, brilliant. Ronnie, we were a family that watched Bruce Forsyth, and I loved him, and I think I'd taken a fair bit from him. Ronnie, I always liked, so you got Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker, and then you got Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, big influences. And in both Cook and Moore and Corbett and Barker, I went with the shorter half. But it was also the warmth. Corbett was way warmer than Barker, and Moore was way warmer than Cook, right? And both of them slightly underappreciated for the naturalness of their talent, as opposed to the slavish writing of Cook and Barker. I mean, although to that I would say, it's not sport, is it? There doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. That always annoys me when people want to compare. Well, they're better. I don't like that. They're all bringing joy, right? But Ronnie, yeah, I used to watch those bits, and I loved his monologues in the chair. A lot of people will tell you, oh, I didn't like that bit. I loved those, right? Maybe I could see even then, I was only a kid, a little something that was style would suit me, maybe. And before I left the school in Swansea, I was just starting to get the bug for wanting to do stuff on stage. And we wrote a version of Star Wars for the stage. Ambitious. And I played Luke, of course. And the prettiest girl, Helen Williams, was Leia. And we had a little kiss at the end, lovely. But R2-D2, as you can imagine from his shape, was very challenging. So instead of an R2-D2, we had a C-3PO, oh my. And the droid, we had K9 from Doctor Who, which was more square and boxy and easier to achieve. So our version of Star Wars had C-3PO and K9. So the reason I'm telling you this is we did this performance, but before the actual play, I went out to the front of the cloth and did jokes from the two Ronnies joke book. Those news bulletin jokes, you know? And some of them were a little bit saucy. And I can remember the teachers looking at me like that. So Ron was a big influence. I loved him. And then I got to know him because, how did that come about? Oh, what was the actual beginning of that? That was, I'd always liked him. And did he come in? How did we actually first meet? The first time we met, I was told he wanted to come to one of my live shows. I was playing in Croydon, and they lived near there. And I knew he was coming. He got in touch with the promoter to ask to come. And I was nervous because he was going to be in the audience. So during the sound check, I was doing my impression of him just to relax myself. And it was the old joke that Ron used to tell, where he said, my great uncle Arthur. He said, he said, my great uncle Arthur, he said, died at the Battle of Little Bighorn. He said he wasn't involved in the fighting. He said he was camping in a nearby field and popped over to complain about the noise. So I was doing that in the sound check just to relax myself. And so then the time comes for the show, and I know he's out there in the darkness. So I start the show, and it's not getting the laughs it normally gets at that stage because I'm off my timing because I'm nervous. And then I say something, and from over there I hear ah. I think, thank God for that. And then I relax. So then, after the show, I had this packed dressing room. There were people from the video company there. There were all sorts of people. I think Claire was there, my wife, blah, blah, blah. And Ronnie and Anne came back. And we're all there. And I'm chatting to Ronnie. I got great photos of this as I was talking. It's the first time no. We'd met briefly once at some BBC event with Barker as well. And I was introduced to them by Ronnie and Kona. So there were 3 Ronnies. We met briefly at that and hit it off. Anyway, so I'm chatting to him in the dressing room. And I said, I was so nervous because I knew you were in. I said that in the sound check, I started doing your voice. He said, oh. I said, it was that one about my great uncle Arthur died at the Baton. Now, as I'm doing this, the other people in the dressing room go, is he doing the impression to him? And all the conversation elsewhere falls silent. And they're all kind of going, and they're all worried for me. How is he going to react? So Ron's looking at me like this, you know. And I said, I did that when my great uncle Arthur died at the Battle of Little Bighorn. I said, he wasn't involved in the fighting. I went, and he's looking at me, and they're all silent. I go, he was camping in a nearby field, and Ronnie went and popped over to complain about the noise. and the room, thank you, the room went, oh. So he was a big influence, and then we became friends, and he would come to my shows. He came to when I married Claire, he came to that, and was so gracious with all my Welsh relatives who wanted to talk to him, and he was charming and lovely, and we did a few shows together, and parties and lunches, and whenever I would ring him, Anne would answer. We lost Anne as well now, but Anne would answer. Anne was very theatrical. She'd worked with the Crazy Gang and then gave it all up to bring up the girls. And she would go, oh, hello, and she would chat to me. And then she says, I'll get him, right? And then she went, Ron, it's Rob. And I would hear him coming down the hallway. Honestly, I'd hear, oh, I'm not making this up. I could hear him getting, and then I hear it, and he'd always go, is it me? So he was fantastic.
I love the feedback that was so important to you, getting feedback from Steve Coogan giving you approval.
Oh yeah.
And then also Ronnie Corbett doing his
well,
feedback. I was,
you know, I had an odd situation in that from when I was at school, I got tons of praise, right? I tons of encouragement. I think after you let him come out in those shorts, I think he really ought to behave. I'd always had encouragement. I was never one of those people, some performers that do okay, they say, oh, when I was starting out, they said, you'll never make it, you'll never. I never had the opposite of that. I was always encouraged by my family, by school. Then I went to drama college, and I think I was thought I was the funny one, and always encouraged. But then it didn't happen, you know. I couldn't get through, and I was seeing my contemporaries in terms of age, like the League of Gentlemen, Caroline Aherne, all Steve's Manchester crowd, John Thompson, those guys, Craig Cash, and they're all doing really well, and I'm thinking, oh, because it didn't happen for me till I was about 35, you see, in 2000. I was thinking I missed the boat. I had a career as a radio presenter, you know, and that was all right, but I thought it wasn't going to happen. So yes, so to have him, who I looked up to and still do, you know, to say yes, meant so much, because I was starting to lose faith. Yes. I was starting to.
And similarly, Janie, my wife, is in the audience today. We remember, all of us, having a conversation with Ruth Jones, where she was in tears, about to give everything up and be a teacher. And we were there at that moment. And then that sort of, it's an extraordinary moment, because it's the precipice of a change of choice.
Well, I remember, because, you know, as I say, I was at school with Ruth, but I remember being in a cafe with her in Cardiff. I don't know when it was, but she just wasn't getting acting work, you know. And she was telling me, I thought she was going to train to be a lawyer or something like that. But anyway, I can remember saying to her, no. I think you've got something. I think you're really good. You've got to carry on. Yes. But isn't it interesting that maybe without that encouragement, I mean, I've had so...
They have returned.
I will say, in your favour, you've nothing to worry about on the prostate front. I've had so many, and this is not mock modesty, you know, this isn't, oh, I've been so lucky, but I have had lots of luck. And I've had lots of those, what they call those sliding doors moments. One of the biggest would be, I made Marion and Jeff with Hugo Blick. Now, I'd been at college with Hugo, but I wasn't that chummy with him. We had the same best friend, which was kind of odd, a guy called James Lovell. He was both our best friends, but we weren't that friendly. I had made this demo tape of Marion and Jeff, of Keith Barrett driving his taxi. And I'd sent it out to loads of people, a VHS, and it came back, no thank you. And I got used to the sound of a jiffy bag being pushed through the letterbox, and then falling through the air, and the crash of failure, fladum! And I'm going to go, oh, they've returned my VHS, okay. I sent it off to agents, producers, everything. But I used to carry one round with me as well. Now, I knew that Hugo, by then, was working as a kind of script reader, come producer, come writer, and he was on a show called Operation Good Guys that was a success then. So you might say, well, why don't you send it to him? And I didn't, because the thought of rejection from him, a peer of mine at college, I couldn't take that. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, maybe if I ran into him. So I was at the BBC one day. For a while... Because I had a good career by this point now doing voiceovers for commercials. Philadelphia with chives. Kellogg's Crunchy Nut Cornflakes. They are ludicrously tasty. I did everything, right? And I also, for a while, was the guy that did, and with Match of the Day at 10, that Saturday night on BBC One. I did those. And I was in doing one, and I had left, and I had my bag with this VHS, and I swear to God, right, sliding doors, and how you need luck. I'm not exaggerating. I'm walking through the corridors, very, very busy, and I think, wouldn't it be great if I just bumped into Hugo? Now, thousands of people work there. I swear to you, he appeared. At that moment, right? And even then, I didn't really grasp the nettle, as they say. Because he said, what are you doing here? I said, oh, well, I just done a thing about him. He said, oh, well, you're going to have a coffee. We went and sat down. And I'm trying to pluck up the courage to say, I've got this thing. I thought, oh, but what if he doesn't like it? This will be awful. Anyway, we're talking away. I did. I said, oh, I got this. We're on a high kind of, tried to lean all the way down. I got this thing. I said, do you have a look at it? Now, there were 4 characters on there that I'd written and filmed. The best one by far was Keith, and I put him last. Most people probably never got to him. I give it to Hugo, well, good to see you, goodbye, and off we go. And I'm doing loads of voiceovers, so I'm in Soho then, later that day, sitting in a cafe, waiting for the next job, and my phone goes, and he says, yes, Hugo, I like the last character, why don't you come in and we'll chat about it? I went in the next day, and that was how Marion and Jeff was born, and it changed my life. So, sliding doors, synchronicity, luck.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to make the most of it when you have those moments.
And anchored in yes and, yes and, yes and, windows of opportunity, just moments.
But you need the. I mean, I've worked with so many fantastic people, and I'm not being modest. Well, lucky me, I bring what I bring to it. But you got the Trip crowd, the Gavin and Stacey crowd, the Would I Lie to You, lots of really great people.
Yes. And the Trip is happening again very soon. We've got a Scandinavian one next.
Yes, in September we're doing that, yes.
Yes.
I think I've answered my
I believe you are.
thing quite fully, haven't I? 4 things that shaped you.
Definitely done that.
Are we going on to Inspired now?
Yes, and there could be some overlap, but 3 things, people and or things that inspire.
Well, they're all performers. They're all really well-known performers. And we've mentioned Barry Humphries.
Yeah.
I kind of looked up so much to Barry. He seemed so intellectual, so cultured, as indeed he was, so knowledgeable. With playing in Edna, this deliciously, I mean, he was on Saturday night ITV, the Dame Edna Experience, with the wit on Saturday night ITV. I mean, with nothing against, but he was a wit of the highest order. And he made it so accessible. So he really inspired me because I wanted that cleverness of the humour in a way that was accessible to lots of people. So I would say him. Elvis, I mean, he's clearly not influenced me in any way at all, but imagine if I said, and he's obviously been an influence, if only through my sensuality. And Bruce, I love Bruce Springsteen and his work ethic, which I don't have, but I admire it. I really don't. So those have been influences, but so many people. You could put Ronnie in, you could put almost any performer I've watched and liked has influenced. And
what's really interesting is your predilection to being a comedy technician from the very early age when you're watching the TV, just diagnosing it, being a bit more technical.
I think we all are. I think all the people that do it for a living, I think we all are. I think just like if you were more interested in, I don't know, whatever the job is, you would want to get more out of it.
Yes.
So I would say those are the as good a 3 as any to mention.
And we're on to the 2 now, which borrowed from the film up. Squirrels, what would you say are your monsters of distraction, your shiny object syndrome?
I find this really hard. I mean, but I've come up with a couple of answers. Until I lost my sense of smell with COVID, anybody else gone and it's not really come back? Just me, okay.
It certainly happened to my mother as well.
Well, okay, me and your mum. It used to be the smell of leather in a new wallet. Oh, that would take me back. I mean, when I first met Claire, one of the first gifts she gave me was some wallet, and I think she thought she was going out with a weirdo because she gave it to me, and I went... And I was back. I was like in Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet, and I was on my way. I was back at my first day at school in Porthcawl as a little boy with a new satchel.
Ah, yes.
And it took me back to that. But my sense of smell is not what it was. So that's kind of gone. The other thing is, back to impressions. One thing that will sometimes sometimes do this for me. I don't really have a great answer for this, Chris, but is hearing a voice that I know I can do.
Yeah.
And it happens less and less, but I'll sometimes hear a voice of some public figure, and I'll go, oh yeah, that's in my workhouse, isn't it? Or that's in my, yeah. Those are the things, but I find that quite hard to answer.
No, but they're great answers.
I'm not sure that I have them.
No one's ever answered a new leather wallet and sniffing it in. That is a great answer.
Always to distract me, always to...
And is there any voiceover you're percolating at the moment in appealing to you?
Well, I was saying to Chris, we were chatting earlier today, they don't do it for me like they used to, voices. They don't delight me or amuse me. I don't know, maybe I've just grown out of it, but I will hear voices. I hear Farage's voice is eminently doable, but I'm not really on his team, and so I don't really want to spend time in that headspace. But sometimes I'll hear myself, and I'll have a rhythm, and without realizing what I'm doing, I'll be slightly in that thing, and I go, ooh. The other one is Michael Gove's voice, I think is, how long until he ends up on Classic FM? It's just waiting for him, isn't it? His voice, you hear, but I haven't got, we're doing this new trip, and it would be nice, wouldn't it, to have some new voices, but I always say the ones I do are people, it's always a love letter, and they tend to be love letters from my youth, when people were bigger stars and they were mysterious to me. So Ronnie Corbett lived in this, or Barry lived in another world, whereas now they're people doing the same job as me, for better or worse, some of them better, some of them, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I like Richard E. Grant, I'm very fond of, and I know him a bit, and I did him one day to my daughter, and it was as if I was channeling him. My God, it was accurate, but I've not been able to get it back. I can't. I just. But honestly, if you speak to Katie, speak to my daughter, she'll say it was as if he was with us. So I thought I could try and do that. And Jeff Goldblum is another one. I sometimes seem to have, Jeff. But it's, and I think it's because I'm just not as enamored anymore. Yeah.
So now we're on to the one, which is a quirky or unusual fact about you, Rob Brydon. We couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
Okay, what did I write down for this? What did I write here? I've bloody said it, haven't I, earlier, which is that my dad grew up in the same street as Anthony Hopkins. People probably it doesn't deserve applause. People probably
it's only me clapping. It's fine.
Probably wouldn't know that. That's a hard question, Chris. What wouldn't people know? That my dad grew up in the same street as Anthony Hopkins.
Reincorporated for a third time. That's a cool fact.
Yes,
we have shaken your tree.
Yes.
Hurrah! And now we're staying in the... Oh, let's clap. Okay, now we stay in the clearing, move away from the tree. Next, we're going to talk about alchemy and gold, which is when you're at purpose and in flow.
Right.
What are you absolutely happiest doing in what you're here to reveal to the world?
Well, it goes back to that thing of I'm very happy in the garden these days. I'm very happy in nature these days. And I keep seeing all these studies that say now, there are frequencies in trees and, this forest bathing.
Yeah.
Can do things to cancer cells and stuff. I don't know. Is it true? It'd be lovely if it was. Certainly, there are all sorts of magical things. I do stuff with a charity in Wales, a cancer charity in Wales, and they have choirs, and they've done studies for the health benefits of singing in unison with other people. And they do saliva tests before and saliva tests afterwards, and it's done things to antibodies, and it's So I can, and also the mental health benefits of nature, being in amongst trees and all sorts of stuff. So I find that, so more and more, being in nature. And then to bring it back to, what I do for a living, when I feel I'm being funny, when I feel I'm doing something that's good, that's a good feeling. I really like that feeling. If I feel I'm doing something that I should be proud of, as opposed to just tossing off any old tat, which I'm not beyond doing, then that's a great feeling.
Lovely.
And I do love an audience. I think maybe not all performers do. I love an audience. I feel that I would get on. I heard someone else saying this the other day. I've been to see some people I know, and I've been in their audience, and I thought, I'm not sure that you'd get on with this. I'm not sure. But I always feel with my audience, and it tends to be when I meet them afterwards, I think, oh yeah, we kind of get on.
Yeah.
Which is why I think I'll never have a massive audience. Honestly, because I think that it's kind of self-selecting in a way. Does that make sense? I don't know.
I mean, this feels optimum in terms of an experience, so it's good to have an intimate small crowd.
I love. It's not financially viable, but I mean, it's. No, this would be a disaster. But this size audience is a bloody dream, and you're so close. It's gorgeous. This is what you want.
You're welcome. And now I'm going to award you with a cake next.
Oh, you gave me cake earlier. I went to his house earlier. I had cake then. What do you want me to do? Lose this svelte frame?
Yes, actually, coming round for tea and cake caused quite a kerfuffle amongst the neighbours. I didn't know I lived next to loads of chickens. All the neighbours going, "Bah, who's coming?" And there was lots of sort of curtain twitching going on. But anyway, you came for tea and cake, and thank you for coming. So this is where you get to choose a cake of choice. So what's your favourite cake, Rob?
I don't know. A walnut cake. Oh, Claire makes a great cake. What is it, that one she makes? Oh, some courgette, something in courgette. What would that be? No, that's not a cake. That's a
That's a vegetable.
That's a quiche or a flat. What is it? I mean, I would say, does it matter? I have sweated over these questions. I tell you what, I'm never especially specific about. We went to see Oasis last night, right? Right? So we go down. So me, Claire, and my two youngest boys, 17 and 14, they know all the words. Talk about a band staying relevant. My audience, basically gets older and older with each tour, right? I do not attract a new young crowd. Oasis, my God, loads of young people. So we stayed at the hotel, and we're having breakfast this morning before we went then to see my parents in Port Talbot, and then we went to see Mr. Grimes and Janie. And we're having breakfast, so let's just have breakfast. And my 17-year-old is up and down. I want to go and see if they've got some brown sauce. They're going to go there. And my attitude is, look, there's your breakfast, just eat it. No, I can tell I'm in the minority from that reaction, right? You're on Tom's side, aren't you? You are, aren't you? Yeah. He's like, have they got black pepper? They just use the pepper that's there.
Which still didn't come up to a cake of selection.
No, all right, so you asking me for a cake, I'm going, well, I haven't got a favourite cake, have I? I mean, back in the day, it would have been chocolate cake. But again, I find as I get older, if I have that now, I go into some kind of diabetic coma. I mean, if I have chocolate, I just want to go, ugh. So it would be a tiny bit of... Sorry? Bara breathe. Well, what a Welsh stereotype that is. I find that very offensive. Would I be having some cowl and lava bread, first of all, after I brought the sheep in from the field? Get out of here. Bara breathe. I don't know if I've ever had that. I mean, I like Welsh cakes. There we go. She said, there you go.
The whole point of that is now you get to put a cherry on your cake. It's the final
on my
metaphor.
indiscriminate cake. It could be any sort of cake. And the cherry, I do like cherries, if that's any help.
That's very helpful.
Yes.
And the cherry on the cake now is stuff like, what's a favourite inspirational quote, Rob Brydon, that's always given you sucker and
Oh,
pulled
well,
you
I'll
towards
tell
your
you
future?
a thing, that a quote that, I mean, again, I found that very hard. Right, let me ask you, if this tormentor here had said to you, what's your favourite inspirational? Put your hand up if you could think of one. Right, hardly anybody.
The lights were down.
No, there was hardly any hands. But I'll give you a quote. It's back to Barry Humphries. This is going to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, so just go with it, but this is the honest answer. I did a show about 3 years ago, maybe 4, with the band at the London Palladium, and Barry came to see it. Well, can you imagine what a thrill that was? So he's in the audience, and then as he left me a message on the phone, which I still have, and he said all the right things, of course. What else was he going to say? But he goes, I loved it, this or that. And he said, do you know what? He said, you didn't just entertain that audience, you befriended them. And that meant the world to me, because I knew that meant a lot to him, to befriend an audience. So whilst it sounds like I'm going, look at me, that is the honest answer. You asked me to come up with a quote. I will often think of that quote in times of self-doubt, or, needing a little bit of a lift.
Yes.
I'll go, well, Barry said that, so.
That's a lovely answer.
Thank you.
And with the gift of hindsight, next, what notes, help or advice...
We come on to subsection 4C.
Lovely.
Yes.
With the gift of hindsight, what notes, help or advice might you proffer to a younger version of Rob Brydon?
Well, this is interesting, because you could describe me as a jack of all trades, master of none, okay? So there's a part of me that goes, should I have just focused on one thing and become great at it, right? And I think the ultimate answer is no, because I love the variety. I love, I get to act in some things, and I get to host some things, and I get to do a show where I sing with the band, and they all have their own audience. But that's the only thing with, I think we always wonder what would have happened if you went the other route, only because I'd be interested to know what happened. I have no particular yearning for that other route. When people say, do you have any regrets? I'm always staggered when some people say, no, I have no. I've got a million regrets. Of course. I mean, how can you live and not have regrets? So that ties in with this question. Yeah, with hindsight, well, I'd be interested to know what, but it's all worked out pretty well. If you consider that I was a presenter on the shopping channel in my early to mid-20s, so the likelihood of going from that to working with some of the very best people in comedy is very slim.
Yes.
Because what I used to find in those days when I was a local radio presenter and a shopping channel presenter, I would send my CV off to agents and to casting directors, and rightly, they would go, I'm not going to... Guys presenting, and it's on YouTube, please don't look at it, of me hosting on a bloody shopping channel. Because in my naivety, I thought, well, it's a job, it's London. But those choices, we talked about making the most of opportunities, those choices can hamstring you and inhibit you, because people will judge you from them and go,
Well, and admiring all the variety greats like Bruce Forsyth, what you've struck on is this sort of polymathic approach of just being a broad-scape entertainer.
Well, I'm sort of doing all the things I love, and we talked about this. I think the media landscape now, it's so fragmented, yes? So people tend to watch what they watch, and you'll say to someone, oh, have you seen Succession? It's superb. And people have never even heard of it, right? Because everybody can watch now what they like. They don't have to stick with a show and get to like it. And the bad side of that is that there are very few shared experience shows. I mean, Gavin Stacey was a triumph, that last special, because so many people watched it. When it went out, so many people shared it. So the downside is there's fewer of those. The upside for people like me and for people like you, there's more work about, because there are so many bloody shows being made. But, and the other good thing for me is that I could be on a thing where I did a thing for Amazon called My Lady Jane, which I loved, and then it didn't get recommissioned. And that's a Tudor thing, you know, costume and quite funny. I can do that, but then I can also go over there and present Would I Lie to You, and quite possibly those two audiences don't cross over. So you can be that thing to those people and this thing to these people. And if you like doing lots of stuff like I do, I've come to the conclusion that actually works out quite well.
Yes.
For me, anyway.
Lovely answer. We're now finally going to be ramping up to talk about Shakespeare and legacy in a moment, but this is now the pass the golden baton moment. Now you've experienced this from within, Rob Brydon, who might you like to pass the golden baton along to in order to keep the golden thread of the storytelling going?
I would again ask the audience, put your hands up. How many of you could think of someone as an answer to literally nobody. Right. I am going to choose a comedian friend of mine who you'll know. You may not know his name, but so his name is Alex Lowe, and Alex plays Clinton Baptiste. You know, I'm getting the word nonce. You know him from Phoenix Nights? And he plays Barry from Watford, and he's in all the good comedy people things. So he's in a lot of Steve's things. He's in Partridges. He's in stuff like Look Around You with Pete Serafinovich and Robert Popper. He's superb. He isn't as celebrated as he should be, although it's his current tour, as Clinton is playing bigger rooms than he ever has, so it's all going in the right direction. So I think he'd be a wonderful guest and a wonderful storyteller.
That's a wonderful golden baton pass. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And so now, finally, inspired by Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, borrowed from J.Crees in As You Like It. This is about the 7 ages of man now. How, when all is said and done, Rob Brydon, would you most like to be remembered?
Well, did you refer to Jacques as J.Crees then?
I did.
Okay, I didn't want to let that go unnoticed.
Sure, thank you.
Well, if I'm ever asked this, which I am occasionally, I always say, as a good dad, because that's all that matters. I got 5 children, so that I would love it if, when I'm gone, they all thought I'd been a great dad. I would love that, right? But also, you know, it would be nice. It would be nice to be thought of as someone who did good quality stuff, and that maybe people remember for a bit. You know, that would be. That would be nice, but in reality, it is more your family and, you know, people around you. Sometimes if you're with people and they've lost their... My parents are still very much with us, but I have friends, obviously, who lost their parents, and some of them with parents who were performers. And I do love it when I hear them talk fondly of their parents. Oh, it was great when Dad did this, and I learnt this from Dad. It's very hard, I think, I found it very hard to teach your kids things, you know. I mean, Jesus. There's a great... my friend is the singer-songwriter Martin Joseph, and he did a great song where he says about he's taking his daughter, driving her back up to London to college or something, and one of the lines in it is, he says, take my best and leave behind the rest, you know. It's a simple but lovely line. And you sort of hope that they've learnt stuff. I think like my 14-year-old son, he says a thing that I sometimes say, and I do sometimes think, oh Christ, is this all that he's going to take from me? Which is, I can sometimes be guilty of saying, oh, I can't be arsed. And he says that, oh Jesus, is that the one thing? So when I'm gone, and he'll say it, and Claire will go, oh, Rob used to say that. I do notice that. I think, oh, come on, surely there's something else.
Is that it? Lovely.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it would be, because what better thing could there be than for your kids to carry you forward, you know?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of part 1. We're going to do a Q&A after the interval that's just about to start now.
There are no more questions. I mean, we surely they've all been asked.
But there will be more to come. Think of some questions. There might even have been some questions heckled in by the internet as well.
I have been asked before, by the way, what happened on the fishing trip. If it would mean a lot to you to ask it, then please do. But do be warned, I have been asked it before.
So, ladies and gentlemen, end of part 1. See you in 20 minutes for Q&A. Rob Brydon! I will see you for the Q&A. Let's go off. See you in 20 minutes. Thank you. And welcome back. Hurrah, hooray, hooroo. Just before bringing Rob back on for the Q&A, you'll notice on your seats you did have these two-sided flyers. The idea being the QR code will take you straight to a form where you can give some feedback about what you thought about the show. This is still the earlier days of the live show, so I'd love to know what you thought. And then there's also the opportunity for you to get involved in the show directly through a number of different series strands that are there. One of the most interesting ones, hopefully, is called Legacy Life Reflections, which is to use this curated structure to record either your story or the story of somebody near, dear, or close to you for posterity, lest we forget before it's too late, without any morbid intention. Very, very interestingly, my own father, Colin Grimes, was a very willing guinea pig to me taking him through the Legacy Life Reflection structure. I did this 5 years ago during the beginning of the pandemic when the podcast first got going. Very sadly, my dad died last August, but he's now become a bit of a sort of mascot. He knew what I was doing. There was no morbid intention, but I happened to record my father using this curated structure you've seen happen this evening in the halcyon days of his 80s before he slipped into a crater of declining health. But now that I still have the recording that I have of him, because as we know, what we miss the most is what somebody sounded like, what the sound of their voice was, but I can't tell you how precious that is. So yes, please do feel free to go to the QR code beyond today, and at the end of July, from all the sort of feedback that's put into, there's going to be a competition winner amongst you all, and somebody in this audience will be offered the idea of having 2 episodes, one to record either your story or the story of somebody near, dear, or close to you, or indeed a story to help promote and amplify the work that you're doing yourself, either personally or with your business. Thank you for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome back with your questions, Rob Brydon! Now, I have a question brick which we can throw amongst the people. Make sure you've got it in front of you because we are also streaming this as we do so. We've got to make sure that your questions are heard. So are there any questions? And please let me know where I can come galloping up or throw this cube at you. It's very soft. It doesn't hurt you. Who has a question for Rob Brydon? It's like an auction. You've twitched. We're off. Up here. Here we go. Who put their hand up? There's a couple of you. Can I make sure this is in your lap and then speak into the microphone? Rob, your first question is coming.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
So you're a bit of a genius when it comes to the kind tease. How do you do it without crossing the line, and has it ever backfired?
So did you say the kind tease?
Yes.
Oh, right, yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I do like, I like that. Now, see, Barry Humphries, that's very much from Dame Edna. You know, she used to excel at that, and I loved it. John Rickles would be another person that did that a lot. I don't know. I think that there's just something in me, in how I look and how I sound, that allows me to say things quite cutting to people, and people laugh. You know, and no, honestly, I was saying to Chris in the interval, it's quite interesting what you find out about your persona, or, you know, I mean, I'm pretty much me, you know, when I'm on stage, but obviously some things are dialed up and some are dialed down. Audiences seem to like it if I get a bit exasperated, or if I get a bit indignant, or if I get cross with someone. They seem to like it. And you see, it's in Bryn as well. It's one of my favourite things with Bryn is when he gets angry and cross. But Gwen, you know, and the way he goes at Gwen, what have you. And it must be, I suppose it must be some part of me. No one's ever asked me. I do think that's a really interesting observation, because I do use it. You know, in my live shows, I get cross with audience members, and I say, for God's sake, make an effort. You know, usually the first time a woman will ask a question, I'll refer to her as a gobby cow. I mean, it's not Oscar Wilde, is it? But I mean, it always gets that laugh. And I think it's those words coming from this face. I don't know. It's just, or there's a bit of Bruce Forsyth in that, you know, the way that he would, you know, he'd get cross, wouldn't he, with people, a bit like that. And I'm glad you've asked that, because I'm very aware of it. I'm very aware that it's I mean, I had somebody, when I did a show at the Edinburgh Festival years and years and years ago, who was very overweight, and I called them morbidly obese. Yeah, I know. Well, nowadays, you see, no, but it was in my Keith Barrett guys, and as Keith, you could get away with even more. I mean, you're what I call morbidly obese, so you've got to be there. But she was laughing, you know, crying with laughter. She enjoyed it so much, she had to be helped away out of the theatre by her family, who were also crying with laughter.
Lovely first question, well done, and you weren't a gobby cow at all, you were marvellous. It was wonderful. Okay, next question, please. Now, do you mind if I hurl it over there and then pass it to this? Well, I'll tell you what, I won't do that.
Is that a microphone?
It is a microphone, it's a question cube. So can I throw it after we've done the second question?
You say question cube as though that's something we're all familiar with.
I was just told, who's asking the question? Yes, sir. I'm going to chuck it at you. There you go.
Hello, Rob. Can you hear me?
Well, not particularly louder than before you held the question cube, but go ahead.
Rob, do you still have any acting goals that you want to achieve? Maybe certain characters, etc.?
Well, I mean, on one level, yes, but on another level, no. I mean, look, in an ideal world where we have hover boots and everything is marvellous, yes, it would be lovely to do, I mean, you know, if someone said to me, oh, Anthony Hopkins wants you to be in such and such, then I'd go, yeah. My problem is I'm quite content, and I don't have a need. I don't have a need. And to achieve those things, you've got to really need it. You've got to be...
You can't be asked.
You probably couldn't hear him because he was using the question cube, but he said you can't be asked. That's
lovely
very
bit of
witty.
Reincorporation there as well. Thank you. The cube is very enigmatically gone to the row behind. So yes, sir. Your next question.
Hello, Rob.
Wow, the cube is working.
Woohoo!
This is the cube 2.0.
Sorry, drama teacher.
Very good.
You've been very candid and kind about all the gifted people that you've learned so much from. Bob Mortimer, is there anything that you've learned or gleaned from him, or do you just sit back and enjoy him like everyone else does?
I certainly sit back and enjoy him. If you watch the episodes of Wilty when Bob is on, in many cases I look like a lovelorn teenager. So he's always over there. I'm like this. There's something so likeable about Bob, and yes. You know, in person as well, not just on screen. He's very much as you see him on the screen. What have I learnt? Well, I would say indirectly, I've learnt what you learn from all the great people, which is, you know, be who you are. I mean, a little bit, you know, what you asked about the insulting people, but, and as I say, it just works for me. You know, I love the saying, ride the horse in the direction that it's going. And that works for me. So, and that thing about Elvis, who I'm always being compared to, where they said in the early days, you know, he said, I was shaking my leg and they started to scream. So I thought, well, I'll shake it a bit more.
Lovely answer.
So from Bob, you know, yeah, it's, you know, there's no one like Bob. So you go, try and be individual. You take all the influences, and I'm painfully aware of all my influences, but hopefully they go into the blender and they come out as a unique thing, which is you.
Thank you. Lovely answers. Great question.
It was almost profound.
Marvellous. Next question from the lady in the back corner.
Hi, Rob. A few years ago, you did a wonderful stage show called Town to Town with David Mitchell and Lee Mack.
Oh, yeah.
It was so funny. Please, are you going to do any more?
It's very unlikely, and I will tell you, and I'll tell you for why. David Mitchell is very happy at home. he and Victoria are one of the happiest married, which is not to say that mine and Lee's marriages are not blissfully happy as well. But no, David he's not as fond of the touring life. Although God knows those were short tours. I mean, they were about as gentle as it's possible to be. So it's always just trying to persuade David, really. And now he's got this Ludwig show, which takes up a lot of his time, you know. That's a big hit, so that's a long shoot. So, no, I mean, this was a show I did with David and Lee, where we went round, and in the first half, it was quite nice. All the audience had been emailed questions about the town we're in. And in all honesty, a tiny percentage responded, but it was enough to have some stats. So I would say to them, I asked this audience, what's the most embarrassing thing about Brighton? Or who's the most famous person? Blah, blah, blah. And we would do that, and there'd be a competition. And then in the second half, it was dilemmas from the audience, and we would solve them, and la la lee. And we really enjoyed it, and it went down very well. And people came from around the world. People came from Canada, from New Zealand. I mean, amazing, all that way to see it. But there's no. I think it'll happen again at some point, but it's not imminent.
David Mitchell's a home bird is the conclusion there. So a question in the same
He's a
section,
home
then I'll
bird,
move
he is.
after this.
Hi, Rob. We love your appearances on Would I Lie to You? Who is your favourite co-guest and why?
When you say my appearances on Would I Lie to You, I mean, I host the bloody show. I mean, you make it sound like on those ones that you're on. Oh. But who is my favourite? Well, Bob, you know, I love Bob. Recently, I have been very fond of Lucy Beaumont. I like the ones that are very singular. I would say Lucy was very, but where Sophie Willan was on, she was great. James Acaster, I'm a big fan of James Acaster. I think he's fantastic. I look on him as one of the new young comedians, which of course he's not, but he is to me. I very much like them. I love Claudia Winkleman. She's really good on the show. Who else do I like? Henning Vane, he's always great. Yeah, so with those. It's always nice when someone comes on new, and who have we had in this last series? We've done a series that hasn't gone out yet. And we had some good people, and Jules Holland came on. He was really good. Jonathan Ross came on and did it. He's going to be in the next series.
How many series in are you now, Rob?
We just did series 19.
Uh-huh.
So, and do you know what? We had Roger Moore. He was booked, and then he got ill. Could you imagine that? That would have been bloody exciting. I mean, is it true or is it a lie? I'm doing Roger Moore.
Thank you, Rob. Next question, sir. You've got the brick in front of you.
Okay, I think you've already answered this, Rob. It's brilliant evening. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. So I was going to ask you, I'm thinking of going on a cruise next year. And which cruise company would you recommend? But I think,
There's probably something in the contract, even though I stopped about 6 years ago, but there's probably something in the contract that says I can only ever endorse P&O cruises.
Brilliant. Have you been on one?
Well, I filmed lots. No, I used to send my parents. In the deal, they gave me some money, and they would also give me a cruise. So I used to let Mum and Dad have it.
Brilliant.
They would do it. They went all over the world. They loved it.
Thank you very much. So it's a very simple question. What's your favourite Oasis song?
Oasis song. Well, I tend to like the ones that I know Noel a bit. I don't really know Liam, so I was there because I know Noel a bit. So when they did Don't Look Back in Anger last night, that was glorious. And he did Half a World Away, you know, the Royal Family song. Those are maybe my favourites. And Roll With It was good. I mean, it was just the occasion, you know, the event, the waiting for them to come out. You knew you were at a thing that was, and the reviews are all 5-star that I've seen, you know. So it was pretty special.
Rob, is it as much fun hanging out with comics off camera as it is on, or does everyone just switch on when there's an audience or a camera, or are they all riffing and is it quite competitive and make each other laugh?
I think it's probably less competitive than you would think. I think it's more fraternal than you might think, if that's the word I'm looking for. And it depends on the comedian. So, for example, it's been a week of concerts, because on Monday I was in Milan watching Bruce Springsteen. And I know, where did it all go wrong? With my friend Steve Merchant. And Steve loves Bruce, but Steve is someone who loves to be funny. Steve is great company. Now, there are some Steves. Why would I want to be funny? I'm a serious man. I'll caveat that by saying no one is funnier than when he can be asked. So someone like Steve is a lovely guy. Steve Mercer is a nice man, and we were out there with our partners, and I remember saying to Claire at one point, what I love about Steve is he likes to be funny. So he's just great company, you know. So some do. Lee Mack is hilarious. He's so fast. And if we're out for dinner or doing whatever, oh my God, he's funny. And the connections he makes, you know, he picks up on things, and he's a delight. Who are the other ones that are funny? They're the one. I always think of those guys. You know, I particularly think of Lee as being very funny. McIntyre's always always got his radar on, looking for the funny. He's always kind of. But it's almost, with Michael, it's almost sort of more of a work in progress when you're with him. It's as if he's spotting something new, you know, and just thinking about how it could go down. Yeah, it's quite interesting, actually. I remember when I first met Steve, I used to get quite frustrated that why are you not being funny? But he's not. That's not the way he is. Not his mind, you know. There's more of an engineer to him, you know, and he's got so many interests and passions and causes, you know, that comedy is just this thing that he's a genius at, almost you know, it's about loving your audience, you know. I think with him it's like, I can attract thousands of people, I suppose I should, you know. It's very, very fascinating guy.
Okay, last couple of questions now. So, Madam, would you like to ask yours?
Hi. We were talking to another couple in the audience earlier on in the interval, and saying how...
Look, what you decide to do after the show, now we're not judging you, but I don't think we need to be made fully aware. You have to take the
opportunities as they arise, so, you know. But we were sort of saying that you give off the impression, or at least tonight you have, that if we were just sat in your front room, you know, with a cup of tea and a slice of cake, that you would be like this. You would just be calm, relaxed, gracious. Is that really you?
Sometimes.
Or is that...
Sometimes, yeah.
You know, just
I'm making a bit of an effort. You have... you know. I'm aware that everybody's looking this way.
Yeah.
But that's the strange thing, right? Look how ludicrously relaxed I am in this situation. This is an odd situation. You're all sitting looking at me. But I can honestly tell you, my pulse is not racing. It would have been once.
Well, I can assure you, if I was sat having tea and cake with you, that would be a very odd situation for me. Thank you.
No, well, that's another, these, you know, it's really interesting questions, because yeah, no, I'm doing what I love to do, and so I'm very comfortable in this situation. And yes, you know, if this many of you were in my house, I'd struggle to, whether it's the British house or the one in France.
And I believe we have the last question now, if that's okay, with this gentleman. Over you go.
Rob, what are your memories of More For Us QEH school 30 years ago, where I first saw Young Man?
Oh, did you? You were there at those shows?
I put in a little line that you read out.
Go on.
So we all had to put in things. It was the time of Pee Wee Herman.
Yes.
So I put in, I know you are, but what am I? And then you were doing your sketch with your people.
Yeah.
And then you were like dying, I think it was. Then you picked it out of the bucket. And you said, I got one thing to say to you. I know you are, but what am I? So, yeah, you were there a few times, weren't you?
Yeah. I loved those days because that was when I was trying to get into comedy. See, what happened was I went to drama school, great, you know, and then got a job by chance, really, on BBC Radio because I had a double act with a friend and we were on this radio show and a producer spotted me and then, you know, over the course of time, offered me my own radio show. So I left college halfway through the course and became an early morning DJ. Chris Rea, The Road to Hell, Traffic and Travel, coming up shortly. Pretty inane and facile and, you know, if that's what you want to do, great, fill your boots. But I really wanted to do comedy. So that's when I fell into that. And then the shopping channel, you know, and I had an agent in Cardiff who called me up one day and said, I got you an audition in London. I thought, wow, I can remember when I was in bed in the afternoon, those were the days. And I thought, London, oh my God, because getting to London from Cardiff was impossible. How do you do it? It's like interstellar travel, you know. I mean, career-wise, you could go and visit, but I mean, getting up there to work. And I thought, what'll it be? Theatre, television, film? It's that bloody shopping channel. But in my naivety, I thought, well, this is an opportunity. So I went and did that. So it was around that time then, going up to, that was 89, 90, 91. And then we were doing our stuff, but what year? Would you remember when? Yeah, that's right, yeah. Because I was telling Chris that it was around the time, the first film I was ever in was a Sean Connery and Richard Gere film. Right? I know, called First Night, about King Arthur. Gielgud is in it as well. And I sat and I watched Gielgud shoot a scene, imagine that, where with Julia Ormond, who played Guinevere, and she's had an offer of marriage from King Arthur, played by Sean Connery, and she's asking his advice. He was this sage chap, and he stood like this, and he had a staff. And she had to go up and say, I forget what his name was, and she said, what should I do, da-da-da-dee? And he goes, oh, you know my feelings, dear, an offer of marriage from Arthur of Camelot. And they go, cut! And a chair would be brought in, and he'd sit down, because he was very old. And they were ready for another one. He's an American director. And he'd come up and he'd go, you know my feelings, an offer of marriage from Arthur of Camelot. Cut! And this went on, and he never varied it. It was identical. And now I had auditioned because, you know, I said I couldn't get arrested. My friend Dougray Scott, the actor, you know, Dougray Scott in a million things. We were at college together. Dougray was on the vroom trajectory. He was the darling of casting directors, and there was the doyen of casting directors then was a lady called Mary Selway, no longer with us. And Dougray was a favourite of hers, and he got me in, bless him. He said, see my friend Rob, you know, see my friend Rob. And I'm sitting there, and she's casting a Sean Connery film, Richard Gere, you know, wow. And they go through the breakdown of which parts are left, not many, right? And she said, now what have we got for Rob? And she's looking through, and she went, right, and she went, Marauder, right? Right? Wait, it gets better. And her assistant looked at my CV and went, 5'7". And I don't think I'm 5'7" anymore. I think I've begun to shrink. Anyway, never mind that. So they go, oh, they found a part, first villager, right? And he had something like 2 lines, and this I call the collective noun for actors, and humiliation of actors, because so much of what we do is humiliating. So I had to audition for Jerry Zucker, the director who'd done Ghost. He was coming off Ghost, right? And they put this big old clunky video camera in front of me, and the part was, I'm here and I'm begging for forgiveness before I get shot with a crossbow. So I have to go in front of a camera, right, in Twickenham Studios in an office and go like this. No, please, I beg you. No. I mean, how demeaning is that? It is it's almost abusive, right? Anyway, I get the part. Wow, I'm going to be, and I tell you what, my wife then was a nanny up in London, and she worked for a well-to-do couple who had tickets for Wimbledon. Wow. And gave us the tickets. So we were going to Wimbledon, and it was in the early days of either a pager or a mobile. And we're there, and this thing goes off, and I go outside, and I get the message, you've got the part in a Sean Connery film. What? So excited. Go for costume fittings. It was designed by an Oscar-winning costume designer. Amazing, right? The day before I'm due to shoot my 2 lines, my agent rings, bad news, they've cut your lines. Do you still want to do it? Well, of course, it's a Sean Connery, Richard Gere film, yes. So I go there, and if you watch the film, it's often on a Sunday afternoon. There's Ronnie Corbett's rhythms there. Did you notice? It's often on a Sunday afternoon. You'll see me early on. Richard Gere comes to this village, and he makes money as Lancelot by having sword fights with the locals, right? And he wants to find somebody to challenge him. And there was an actor called Paul Kinman, and he's tall, he's like this. Richard Gere he goes, who now will challenge me? And he, oh my God, he was handsome. I was watching like this. He was it was like looking at Bob Mortimer. He was charming. This was at the height of his Richard Gere-ness, right? And he's learnt how to do a sword. Who will challenge you? Who will seize the moment today and stand at destiny's doorway, or words to that effect? And then he has to look over, and I'm going to encourage my friend. And I have to go on, you could do it. Now, I was saying to Chris earlier, I was a terrible actor in those early days. I had no idea about cameras and how much to give them or not give them. It was as if I was playing to the back of the stalls. And I'm like Griff Rhys-Jones. I go, oh yeah, you do it. God only knows what Richard Gere was thinking as he had to act opposite this idiot. So I do that, and then there's another, so you see me in that scene, and then there's another scene, and the baddie comes, and he starts burning the village, and we villagers are in a barn, and we're running round, save the children, and we're trying to save the children, not the charity. We weren't taking a collection. Save the children. And I shout, shut the doors! Shut the doors! Not in the script. I improvised. So it looks like I've got a line. Anyway, I did that, and I thought, my God, this is it. This is the beginning. I am going to be in movies. I'm going to be Al Pacino. I'm going to be Dustin Hoffman. Anyway, the film comes out, and we go to Leicester Square to watch it. Not the premiere, but just to see. Oh, I'm excited. My bit is coming up, and I'm watching that. And I know I'm shite. I'm terrible. And I can see it. And I sit there and I just go, oh, Jesus Christ. Because I can just see I'm overacting, I'm doing too much. Oh. And I never had another sniff from Mary Selway, the casting director. She probably rued the day. And Marion and Jeff was the first time I gave a proper screen performance. I felt so relaxed in the car. I knew where the camera was. I realized I knew that was my shot to try and act like my heroes acted, where they do not very much. And I'm still capable now of forgetting that and doing too much. But hopefully, when the checks and balances come in, I do it less than pitching it right. But it's very easy. It's very easy to do.
I have returned with the question brick. It started to work, as you said, 2.0 was great.
It was good.
Just before we started the show, we were riffing on an adage about comedy improvisation. You said, oh, I like that. It's if you can't top it, stop it.
Oh, yeah.
And you had Oasis last night, Cake with the Grimeses this afternoon, the Good Listening To show just now. I think it's time we bring the evening's proceedings to a close. We're going to meet Rob now in the foyer. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Brydon. I've been Chris Grimes, that's Rob Brydon, roll credits, good night. Chris Grimes. If you'd like to be in the show too, or indeed gift an episode to capture the story of someone else with me as your host, then you can find out how care of the series strands at the goodlisteningtoshow.com website. And one of these series strands is called Legacy Life Reflections. If you've been thinking about how to go about recording your life story or the life story of somebody close to you for posterity, but in a really interesting, effortless and creative way, then maybe the Good Listening To Show can help. Using the unique structure of the show, I'll be your host as together we take a trip down memory lane to record the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of either your or their life story. And then you can decide whether you go public or private with your episode. Get in touch if you'd like to find out more. Tune in next week for more stories from the clearing. And don't forget to subscribe and review wherever you get your podcasts.